writing a novel is a hard thing just for anyone to do, but to be young and to win multiple awards over your first novel is such an achievement. Today, we're going to be speaking to a WA novelist who has accomplished such greatness and is going to even accomplish more over the next 24 months. Welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. This is Joey Buzzertil. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to Holden Sheppard. He's been on our show before, but this time we're going to get to see him. And we're going to be hearing about the exciting news that he's had in regards to his novel, Invisible Boys, and future prospects in regards to his second book. Holden, how are you?
G'day, Joey. Thanks for having me back. Great to be here.
Oh, I always get excited to have you on the show because I loved your novel, which I've read for the second time now. And secondly, I get very excited to hear about young people that are achieving and accomplishing great things. So before we get started, can you give us a little bit of a run through of what like the last 8 to 9 months have been like for you? Because I think I spoke to you in January 2020. So what's the last 8 months been like?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster for me, for all of us, obviously. Obviously for those in Victoria, it's even worse at the moment. But, I had big plans for 2020. It was going to be kind of, a couple of East Coast tours, and I was going to take the book out into schools all over the place. And then obviously the pandemic happened, everything shut down. So initially I thought, well, 2020 is a write-off of a year. Like most people, it kind of is a write-off of a year. But the book has continued to do really good things. So it got, shortlisted for the Victorian Premier's Literary Awards, and then it got longlisted for a few things, got notable, and then it's just won the WA Premier's Literary Award for an emerging writer, which is awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It's like I love the the awardee prestige stuff, but like they give us 15 grand for that one, and I'm like, woo, cash.
Yeah. Well, because the thing is that like I'm saying this in a loving way, you just seem to be like winning all these things all the time. Like, when is it going to stop?
I think that's like the external perspective of it, and the internal perspective that I have is like it won't last. It's going to run for one award season. It's picked up a whole heap of things in that award season, and then it's it will finish. So, and I'm very conscious of it will come to an end, and this is a really great train to be on. I'm just going to enjoy the ride while I'm on it, and then at some point we'll be diving back into the trenches and working hard again and struggling again.
So with the when I spoke to you last, I guess it's almost a year ago. So like, what have been some of the feedback that people have been giving you about their experience with the book? Like I remember reading the book and really resonating with all three characters and loving it. And like even reading it the second time, I picked up more things. So I guess you've been getting lots of people reaching out or maybe sending emails. What are some of the things that you've noticed people are telling you?
Yeah, I'm really lucky that way. Like I'm really grateful. I get a lot of feedback. So I get a lot, probably every day, every second day, I'll get a message from someone, and it's email or social media, and usually it's saying something to the effect of like, this is the book I wish I had when I was a teenager. I wish I'd read this. A lot of guys who are past their teen years, so anywhere from 20 to 70, 80.
My age, yeah.
I'm saying you were 80, but adult men are often the ones messaging me, and they're often saying things like, this gave me a chance to kind of imagine what my teenage years would have been like if I could have acted on my feelings, for other men and for boys at the time, So that's been pretty cool. A lot of guys say it helps them process the trauma of what they went through. So they went through, it's hard. Being a teenager is hard, full stop. And then when you go through it with that layer of like struggling with being gay, it's really tough. So a lot of guys, and I was the same until I wrote the book, you kind of get through it and you kind of go, okay, I survived it. Let's just move on. And you don't look at it. You don't deal with it. A lot of people don't go to therapy, full stop. So a lot of the messages I get are from guys who've read it, and they kind of go like, I related with Zeke. I feel like Zeke was me, or Charlie was me, or Hammer was me. They relate to the boys who are going through this process of coming to terms with their sexuality in a small town. And that's kind of the coolest thing. That's the message I get all the time, is that they related to one of them or all of them, and they wish they'd had this when they were younger.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, like, I've really noticed how different you are. You know,
Like how?
your your confidence is you're really. I mean, because I remember when I first met you, you were just starting doing this podcast interview thing, and now you've probably done how many thousands.
A
So
few.
I can notice your confidence. Do you feel that this journey has really given you a different lease on the way that you see yourself?
Yeah, that's really interesting feedback to get. And thank you, because like I don't often get feedback like that. People don't tell you
Mm.
stuff like
Well,
that.
maybe it's because people haven't interviewed you twice, like I have.
Yeah, yes, of course, that's true.
Yeah.
But people, anyway, it's cool feedback to get. Yeah, I've noticed it. So just writing the book in itself, like if you could see me 3 years ago before I wrote 3.5 years ago before I wrote the book, like I was so repressed in so many ways,
Mm.
so quiet. I didn't talk about any of this stuff. I didn't think I was any good in a social setting. I would crumble, and I still have that tendency. I still think I am that person, but um, as I've gone through the kind of process of having to talk about my feelings, having to talk about the book, um, you have to be confident, or you'll be eaten alive. Like
Mm.
this industry, like it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I've had to learn that, like, well, you can sink or swim here, mate. Like you
Mm.
can crumble.
But that's an interesting thing that I guess we're touching upon is that when you write a book, that's one part of the process because you're putting your soul and your heart out to write this book. But then to win awards and then to go on this wonderful trail and journey and adventure of meeting the fans and talking about it is it's a different journey. And I guess it's interesting. I guess from a reader's perspective, did you expect that? Did you
Oh,
expect that you probably just thought I'm going to write a book and that's it? You probably didn't expect the second part, did you?
no, and I was terrified of the second part. I was scared, and I remember when so the book was shortlisted for the Hungerford Award, which if you win that, you get the publishing contract. So it went on to win that. But when it was shortlisted, I had to do a podcast as a shortlisted author. All the shortlisted authors had to do it, and the publicist at Fremantle Press at the time kind of said to me, like, every time you mention the word gay or that you are gay, she's like, your voice went really quiet and you
Mm.
shut down. And I was like, oh, like again, it was one of those things with like, I wish someone had told me this. I didn't have that feedback. Once I had it, I noticed it. Like I was scared. I was really scared to do the promo stuff.
Scared to be out to talk as an out gay man.
I think so. Like I've always been an out gay man,
Yeah,
but I don't know. There was something about talking about it that was just vulnerable. And
you're definitely an out gay man, mate.
I'm still in the closet. Did you just out me?
So that's good, and I think that's the thing that is a gift that you're giving the world, is that not just your story and your book, but you're giving them your journey, which gives people confidence. Like that's I think why I like interviewing you, is because I get confident after I speak to you, and I want to go and write a book. But I or do what I do. I guess I do the Secret Men's Business stuff, or even doing this podcast. It gives me confidence to sort of say, hold on, of course I can do this. So
Yeah.
it's good. So that's a good thing that you're giving. I wanted to talk about your transition now to TV or to film. So can you share any information about how Visible Boys may be turned into a movie or a miniseries?
Yeah, well, I can say, well, firstly, like, oh my God, like,
Oh my God! Congratulations! Yay!
I'm still pinching myself, like, it's going to be on the screen.
Remember in our first interview, I predicted this, and you said, "Oh, maybe," and now here we are talking about it.
And it was real. It happened. I know. Like, I just don't like to get my hopes up for these things. But it happened. So it's been optioned for film and TV options have been bought by a director called Nick Verso, who's a gay man.
Yeah.
And Tania Chambers is the producer. And they're just the dream team. They are such the dream team for this project. So we had about 3 or 4, we had a handful of people kind of interested in the rights, which was great because we could kind of say who really shares the vision that I have in terms of what this story is, and who's going to do it justice.
And so you were involved in that process?
Yeah, so myself and my agent had conversations with the different parties.
Yeah.
And, when I spoke to Nick, and like, by the way, like they were all great. Like there was no kind of group that we spoke to who was terrible. They were all fantastic. But when I spoke to Nick, so I had kind of 3 things in my head of like, if it's going to get adapted, it needs to do these 3 things at like the bare minimum. I would throw a giant star tantrum if these things didn't happen. And the three things where I wanted it filmed in Geraldton, which is the hometown, it's where Invisible Boys is set. I really wanted to. I didn't want it to shy away from the graphic sex and the graphic, the grittiness. It's dirty. It's violent. It's sexy. I wanted that to be intact, and I didn't want. Like, it is different. It's a different gay story. It's not mainstream. These characters are not in any way kind of stereotypical or flamboyant. Not that there's anything wrong with being stereotypical and flamboyant, but they're not. They're different boys, and they're deliberately different. So I wanted that to be kept intact. And so,
but I think they're also aligned with where it's set. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it fits in. Yeah. So you got all those three things.
Well, yeah, that's and all these three things without me telling him any of them. Before I could say a single one of those things, Nick's got there and said, "Look, here's my vision. Has to be filmed in Jordan, or I'm not interested. Has to be gritty, and show all the sex. This is not RuPaul's Drag Race. This is something different, and there's nothing wrong with Drag Race, but this is a different beast." Yeah. And we want to make sure that we actually show it for what it is. So and I was just like, he gets it. This guy gets it.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of vision, and it's going to be for TV.
Okay. Like, are we talking like streaming? Because I think at the end of the day, streaming is no different to what's going to the movies these days. I'm seeing better content on TV than I am. Well, I'm not going to the cinema anyway, but like, you know what I mean? So are you going to be part of the making of it?
Yes. So I'll be involved. It's one of those things that, some authors want to step the hell away and just let it happen and let it be what it is. But I think maybe because, it's a personal kind of story. It's inspired from my own life. It's set on location in Geraldton. It's probably useful to have me around. So I will be in the writer's room, helping them kind of sketch out the story, and probably co-writing maybe an episode or two, just something like that, just dipping my toes in the screenwriting kind of pool. Yeah.
So it might actually evolve into more than the story.
Yeah. Look, it might.
You know what I mean? It might be a 6-part thing, or it might end up being a mini series, a TV series that goes on for seasons. And, wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Because I get excited when I see, gay content being where the gay characters are the main focus rather than the secondary characters.
Yes. And isn't that missing in Australia? Don't you think?
I think it's missing. I think, definitely is missing in Australia. We don't really have, I don't know, do we have anything? I don't know. I mean, we've got movies like Priscilla and all that, which is that flamboyant part of it, which are true stories, but we don't really have everyday, real, gritty stories about. I mean, I enjoy. I don't know if you watched or read the book Barracuda.
Yeah, by Christopher Focus. Yeah,
like, see, I love a lot of his stuff. So, a friend of mine directed Barracuda, and I really enjoyed, how he made that film, that miniseries. So we definitely do need more of that.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that's come up with me and Nick doing interviews and things. People are like, so what is the Aussie gay kind of series? And we're like, well, there has been films. And The Sum of Us was one with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Head On, which was based on Loaded by Christos Tsiolkas in the late 90s. Holding the Man was another one, but they're all kind of set kind of 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And they're all like really basic coming out stories where there's no confidence, or it's always a tragedy. Yes. So your story has sadness and some heaviness, but it's raw, it's now. Yeah. So I did see one of your posts on Facebook, and I don't want to go into detail about the detail of the post, but how are you finding that international readers are finding the book? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know the post. Yeah. I'll touch on it, but there was a general kind of post by someone who had read it. So it had this promotion in the US, and it for a few weeks there, it sold a good number of copies in the US on Kindle, which was cool. I really loved that it kind of broke through briefly for a little bit in the US, but it had, there was someone who read it in the States and kind of said like, well, this is all Australian English, and I can't really understand.
I after I read that post, and that's what triggered me to start reading the book again. And I didn't really understand what that comment was about. Like, it's not as if you sit there and talk really full on slang.
It's not like blokes and Sheilas and like.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, there
like,
are blokes and Sheilas. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that full on.
yeah. I mean, so you're finding that the book is internationally received.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not. And it's only through because it's only published in paperback at the moment in Australia and New Zealand. So there's still deals to be made for overseas publication. But Kindle lets you do it everywhere.
Yeah.
So hearing from US readers is mostly who I've heard from. Some in the UK and Ireland, some in Singapore and Canada, I think.
Yeah.
But mostly the US, and most of them can read it fine. Like most of them are absolutely
Yeah.
fine. And
Well, isn't that the beauty of reading a coming out story or a story of hope and growth through a different culture? I think that's why we read. You
yes,
know, if I was to read the same story over and over again based in Melbourne, I would be bored. I want to read stuff about different people so I can learn about how different people think. So that's the beauty of it. So now that you've received all this accolade and you're in this great place, and the second book. So, what's that like to even think about? And I know you're in the process of writing the second book. You maybe finished it. I'm not sure, but was that a bit of a head play with? Did you sort of have to go into a different headspace to sort of go, okay, I need to let go of Invisible Boys and now start this second book?
yeah, yes, I have to. If I'm going to be able to write a second book and a third book and a career of 20 or 30 books or however many I get to before I die, um, like I have to be able to let go of temporary success, and that's hard. It's really hard because everyone who they see the awards and they see the sales and they see the whatever, and they're kind of like, oh, well, you got to keep doing this, and it has to keep increasing. It's
I
that
know. I was going to. So is it like a? Have you dealt with the internal pressure? I
um,
understand. I understand the external pressure. It's about marketing and sales and money for the publishers
yeah,
and all that. But for you personally, how have you dealt with this pressure of having to write a book better than the first one?
yeah,
Which I personally don't believe you need to.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how have you dealt with that?
I've rejected it as a proposition. I've rejected it because I have writer mates who have and are working on their second books and that kind of thing, and they're stuck with, oh my god, how do I make it better than the first? And they're really obsessed with it. And I've read an article by Marcus Zuzak, who wrote The Book Thief, and it blew up huge. Sold, I don't know, 1 million copies internationally. It's huge,
Mm.
and made a movie and all that kind of stuff. He took 13 or 14 years to write the follow-up Bridge of Clay because he was like, how do you follow that up? How do you?
Or he could have been rich and didn't need to.
You could have. But
Yeah.
as writers, you're always going to write. Like you can't
Yeah.
help. So I read that and I thought, okay, like I should learn from his lesson. I mean, I'm not even vaguely as successful as him, but I should learn from his experience. If he's telling us that that was really hard, I'm just going to reject what everyone's telling me, which is that you've got to do a better book. I'm just going to do the book that feels right for me. I'm going to do the book that makes me feel like when I wrote Invisible Boys, I felt free, and I
Yeah.
felt like I can say whatever I want, and I can be as honest and unfettered and raw, and just be there and show up on the page in a way that I don't think about what you think, or my family thinks, or my husband thinks, or the readers, or my publisher. I don't give a crap. I'm just going to write what I want.
That's
And
good.
for me, that's the only way I can make anything good.
Yeah. So with the Invisible Boys, that was sort of loosely based on some of your experiences. So with this second book, how have you created the character arcs in this book? Like, what was the process there? Is it linked a little bit to your life still, or are we going to a different tangent?
No, I think with Invisible Boys, I kind of hit on what my MO is going to be for most of my life, which is that I'm going to dive into my own stuff to craft characters based on what I've gone through. So same kind of thing again. I was looking at 5 points of view, and I'm doing an edit at the moment. It's due in a few weeks with my agent. So I'm looking at maybe making it 3 points of view again, same as Invisible Boy. It just feels. As soon as I made that call in my head, I went, I feel so much better. Like I can do 3, and
Yeah.
it feels really organic to me. So 3 points of view. Basically, when I wrote Invisible Boys, just before I wrote that, I made a list of all the stuff that hurt me. That was my kind of process. Was like, I'm going to write about what hurts. And so there was a bunch of stuff that hurt me in my real life that ended up in Invisible Boys, and there was a bunch of stuff that didn't. So what's in this book is some of the stuff that didn't, and
Right.
it's a bit about.
Can you give us a hint? Because I know that I asked you this last time, and
I would have gone like
you.
that.
Well, I think you were still formulating it all. So,
Mm.
is it basic? Is it another gay story, or is because I think the last time I spoke to you, you said that you wanted it not to be. You didn't want the main character to be the gay character. You wanted to expand your experience as a writer. So,
Mm.
am I on point there?
That. So there'll always be gay characters in everything I
Yeah.
write. And the third book is, gay male, straight male. This second book is there'll be a couple of straight characters, and the third one is the gay character, and you will follow all of their stories, but it doesn't shy away the way kind of mainstream literature does from
Yeah.
gay stuff. It goes deep into it again, like Invisible Boys did.
Is it? I know that you're. My God, you hardly told me nothing in that part.
I'm
But
doing my best.
I know, I know. Is it
Secret.
still? Is it still set? Is it set in the same environment? At least, can you tell us that? Is it still set in Geraldton or in WA, or have you allowed your fantasy and your mind to take you to a different location?
It's okay. I'll tell you, it's set in WA,
Okay.
and it's pitched at adults, not young adults this time. So
Okay, so your fans are growing up with you. You're so clever.
I'm not particularly grown up though, so I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yes, you are. I wanted to ask a bit of a personal question about, you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but like, if you become a successful writer, were you surprised by the monetary gains? Because you mentioned the $15,000, right? And I
Yeah.
noticed that you bought a new ute. So I'm thinking, he's still okay, this boy. So as a successful writer that works very hard, because you do work hard, do you find it satisfying career-wise, financially?
Um, okay, there's a couple of things I want to say here. So one is that no, if you want to make a lot of money, do not go into writing because there's
Really?
yeah. Like, I mean, there is money to be made if you make it through, but to even have the level of success I've had, which is like it's down here on the level
Mm.
of millions, like it's nothing that I'm still down here. To even get that is hard. So like it's uncommon. Do you know what I mean? So if money is not really in this industry, if you are seeking money, you won't you'll give up. It takes like 20-30 years of working before you break through with a debut novel anyway. So there's not going to be that return on investment if you do that. But having said that, it is I
Well,
don't think,
it's having said that you've done it. You
having said
first,
that,
yeah,
yeah. Having said that, and so what happened with the Ute thing, I guess, is my car got totaled. It was written off in a car crash a few months ago, and ended up in hospital, taken there by ambulance and stuff. It was a little bit full on. I was fine, thankfully.
that's good.
But after that, I kind of came out of that, and my husband was like, did you have any, revelations about life, and did you kind of, and I kind of sat there and I was like, actually, do you know, I'm living life in the way I want to in every way. Like I'm with the man I love. I have the hobbies and friends that I love. Like I'm doing the dream career that I've always wanted. But I said, all we've ever done is not spend on anything. We don't buy
Mm.
anything nice. We have nothing. We don't have a freaking mattress or a washing machine that works, like, because we don't spend money because we're artists, we don't have money. So that's why when I had that little kind of scrape, I thought, you know what? I could die tomorrow. I've always wanted a VE Holden Ute, and so screw it, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
And it felt really good.
Yeah,
It felt really
I personally think that you deserve it, and I also believe that you are going to be way more successful than you think. I can feel it in my bones.
Look, I hope so. Like, that's what
I'm disrupted. I'm your friend, so I can tell people like, oh, I know him.
you can do
Yeah.
that.
Going back to that epiphany or that awakening, I guess I wanted to ask you, with the world at the moment,
Mm,
with the whole Black Lives Matters, the Me Too movement, the coronavirus, it's sort of like the world's going through a major awakening.
mm.
So, as a writer and an observer of people and the world, what's your interpretation of what you think is happening? Because surely this must influence some of your writing, or may influence your writing down the track.
I think that's a good point, what you said at the end, which is that it may influence it down the track.
Yeah.
Because uh, for me, it's very hard right now to work out where it's all going to land. Because it
Mm.
is all those things you mentioned are upheavals, and things are changing, and a lot of it's for the better. I mean, probably not the pandemic, but maybe there'll be good things that come out of the pandemic.
Well, I think the pandemic has been a opportunity for people to wake up.
Yeah. I feel like it's made people think. So reflect about what life am I leading, and where are we going as a planet, and if we can stop a little bit for a pandemic, maybe we can stop a little bit for climate change. Like it's raising all those questions. So all these things are really good movements. They're going to change the world probably for the better. For me, it's a case of like not diving into it in the stories and in the writing while it's happening. Some people love to do that. Journalists will do that because they have to. For me, someone the other day mentioned like, oh, you're going to write a book about the pandemic or set in the pandemic. And I was like, God, no, like at least 5 years, probably 10 before I even think about touching on it. And I don't even think I will then, because I don't care. Like it doesn't make me excited. Like we've lived through it. We've suffered it. It's crap. I don't really feel like writing a book about it.
I'm more. Well, that's a good point. I was more interested in just knowing about you generally as an observer. Like, do you think that these situations are going to create different arcs in your characters? You know what I mean?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I know that it would. I don't think that you have to talk about the Me Too movement, or you don't have to talk about the pandemic, but you can. People have changed. I've noticed there's been major changes in how people are interpreting things. Like, I'm a strong believer that adaptability is the key element of this pandemic. If you adapt, you survive. If you don't and stay in victim mode, you will be left behind. So that's going to be, we're going to see differences in way people respond. So I'm just wondering, are you observing that? Are you observing that, and your mind's ticking, going, wow, people are changing, or is it not really in your radar yet?
Yeah, no, I do observe things like that. I love observing people. And the adaptability thing is like, I guess it's how humans have survived this long, because we're very, very good at adapting to our situations. And if we, can't do it naturally, we'll physically build structures that help us to adapt to the situation. One of the things that happened at the very beginning of the pandemic was that I read an article, I think it was on the ABC, and it said something around, like everyone has to have an adjustment reaction before they can kind of accept happening. Yeah. And I remember reading that. It must have been like in Feb. It was just before all the toilet paper panic buying. So it was still, it was an article by someone who was like, look, the writing's on the wall, this is going to happen. And a lot of people were still like, oh no, this is just hype and whatever. And it was like, no, it's going to happen. So I had my adjustment reaction kind of early, had some panic attacks, but then kind of was like, okay, this is the new now. This is the new real. This is the new normal. We have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I would be putting into characters if I was that kind of adaptability.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you and I obviously read the same article, because I feel like that it's really bizarre that you said that, because I read that same article and I just instantly got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
and that's how the Secret Men's business blew up, because I adapted my lockdown thinking I'm not going to sit around feeling sorry for myself. So I got proactive. But as a therapist, I'm noticing more and more people haven't started yet.
They haven't worked it out.
Well, they're still thinking what you said earlier. A lot of people think that they're going to go back. But we're not going back. There's nothing to go back to.
No, and
we only go forward, don't we?
Yeah, and even if like, let's just say we have a vaccine and things resolve in the next 12 months and we go back to normal. Like this level of upheaval, those social movements you mentioned, pandemic stuff, that's huge. That only happens once a century. So whatever's happening now is going to mark what happens for the next 50, 60, 70 years. We don't know yet what that era is going to look like.
Yeah.
We know what the post-war period from 1945 to 2020 looked like. America was in charge and there was relative peace and stability if you were under their banner. We don't know what 2022, whatever, is going to look like. And so for me as a creator, that's disconcerting because I don't know how to comment on it. But my usual response is that I probably don't. I like to go more inward. And even with social movements, like you won't see me always, like I don't always kind of, I mean, I'm pretty openly gay and I'm pretty supportive of organizations and causes and rights stuff, of course. But I don't often like kind of, I'm not an activist and like I'm deliberately not an activist because I don't think I don't think it's not for me. Like for me, the change is the stuff you do within. Like if I walk around and I know that every single person I see, I treat really with kindness, even if they're someone I don't like and they've got views I don't like, I'm like, that's how I'm creating peace in the world. Like that's, I can only do what's in my sphere of influence.
Yeah.
I don't like to shout at people to say, hey, you need to believe what I believe. Obviously I believe it, but I like to.
But you influence people through your literature. So that's, it's pretty amazing. Just a final question, like with all this change, how do you feel about the way that the world is going to go towards the arts? Because you know what I mean. Like because there's a lot of talk about recessions and people having to cut back. Do you even like for example, like I bought, I always buy tickets to the MTC and I go and see a play every month, and like they had to cancel a whole season, which is so devastating, for the actors and all that. So, what's your view on how do you feel the arts is going to survive this?
Look, even pre-pandemic, the arts was kind of being hacked away kind of systematically, like in terms of funding being, pulled back from a lot of bodies. So we're already in pretty bad shape. And, university courses in arts and humanities are being kind of made more expensive and less accessible to people who come from low SES backgrounds. This is already happening. So I worry for the arts, but I'm an optimist. So I kind of worry for the short term. I think like, wow, the next few years is going to suck. And for people who aren't writers, I mean, writing's actually done okay. We can sit in our houses and write books. Our publishers can sell them. Booksellers can deliver them with no contact. Book sales have actually stayed relatively the same.
Yeah, well, because I think that reading is an escape.
Yes, and fiction sales went up and non-fiction sales went down because people wanted to do exactly that.
Yeah, like, I ended up joining, in the pandemic, I joined a philosophy club, right? I thought I would do something different. And I read a book called Sophie's World. I don't know if you've read it. And it's like, it was just this total fantasy world that took me into all these philosophy ideas. I'm thinking, wow, like, I think that you're right. Writing is going to probably sustain itself, but there is a bit of a concern about there's other arts, isn't there? Like you were saying about university now, it's like $70,000, I think, to do an arts degree now.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's kind of unjustified because there's actually no, like if you're doing engineering or something, there's costs involved with labs and things like that. So you can kind of more justify a higher cost. But to teach a humanities degree, it's very, very cheap.
Well, the reason why they're doing it is because they don't want people to study it because they don't feel there's going to be work in that field in the next 20 years.
Yeah, but that's a devaluing of the arts. It's saying that we don't need artists when in fact the pandemic has proved that we very much rely on them for our sanity.
Yeah.
So I think writing's like any art. It will struggle without funding. It needs more funding. It needs more support. Moreover, is going to be those performing arts and those kind of things. I think short term, a lot of suffering probably, but artists are resilient. They've always been resilient. They've always been poor. We'll pull through, and I think there'll be a really, really great, at some point, I don't know when, there'll be a really great renaissance, and there'll be a really great revaluing of the arts and of expression. And I'm just like, I can't wait for that to happen. That's going to be cool when that happens.
I can't wait too. Holden, thank you so much for talking to us again. I'm going to probably reach out and ask you to talk to us when the third book comes out. So if that's okay, I look forward to speaking to you again. So good luck with the draft that you have to edit and get done. Good luck with the TV show. We're looking forward to seeing that. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Joey. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's okay. You've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. The next podcast will be out on Monday morning at 9 a.m. Now, don't forget to hit subscribe and click the like button down below. Till next time, guys. See ya. Bye.